So that's pretty much how genetic memory works.
All right, so back to Assassin's Creed. I'm going to tell you, like, how much of Assassin's Creed have you played?
I've played all but the one with the Native Americans, so I haven't beaten them all, but I played them all.
That's weird. You skipped the one with the Native Americans.
Yeah, yeah, it's
That doesn't
anyhow,
seem
right?
like you at all. Like
Yeah, my
you
mom's
love
side of the
Native
family.
Americans, they're your
I
favorite.
do, man. They're awesome.
And yet, okay, so I'm going to tell you some story from Assassin's Creed. I'm going to tell you the story, and you tell me if this sounds familiar at all.
Okay.
So, like a billion years ago, there was this alien race called the those who came before, or the progenitors, or the
Okay.
precursors, and they created a race to be their slaves called humans, and they implanted them with neurotransmitters in their brains, so they had to obey these artifacts that they create that were specifically designed to rob them of their free will and make them slaves. Now, after some inbreeding between the aliens and the humans, there became a new hybrid race, and the first of these two were were Adam and Eve. They stole an apple from Eden, which was actually a high-powered alien technology used to control minds, and they fled, and this started a war between the precursors and humanity. And eventually, solar flare wiped out all but about 10,000 of humanity and most of the precursors. And those survivors became known as gods, like Juno, Minerva, and Artemis. And the surviving humans were still trying to fight this war. And some of them were descendants from Adam and Eve, and they were the ones who are immune to being controlled by what they call the fruits of Eden. And and it gets better. They are they're fighting the Shadow War underground, but all of the Sword of Arthur, the winged boots of Perseus, the most of the religious things in the Bible, those are all actual things that happened, and those items were actually alien technology. There's like 50 of them lying
Okay.
around.
Okay.
That's the story of Assassin's Creed. Do you know that story?
First of all, it's weird. Second of all, aliens. But third of all, some of that's kind of biblical as far as like the Nephilim go. But
Yeah, but I
wh-
mean, do you know that from playing Assassin's Creed?
no, from playing, no, absolutely not. I thought it was about like an
Right.
assassin's guild, basically, or and they're all about like putting freedom back into things.
And this is the brilliance of Assassin's Creed. It's called multi-level narrative, or what I like to call a la carte storytelling. Depending on how deep you want to go into it, like I knew a lot of this stuff because I'm super obsessive about finding all the little secret things and all the audio files and
Yeah.
hacking into all the computers at the company you work at. So like I was piecing together the story from Assassin's Creed 5, but apparently this is what's going on in the background, but you have to dig for it. And so you can kind of play Assassin's Creed on whatever level is cool for you. Like you played it as a pirate simulator where sometimes you were in an office,
Yeah.
and so you never had to like get exposed to this weird sci-fi alien overlord storyline. But it's there if you want it. It's kind of there if you really really want it.
It's weird, dude.
But if you just want to be an assassin fighting Templar, you can just play it on that level.
Yeah, yeah. See, that's weird. So a la carte, you're saying that like, so they provide everything and you just take what you want from it.
Yeah. You go into a
Yeah.
buffet and you're like, I'll have some of the killing, I'll have some of the adventure and the swashbuckling. I'm not gonna have any of the alien artifacts.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. I didn't
Although
even.
if you do play enough, you end up having to do some of that storyline in Black Flag.
Ah, okay. So you haven't beaten it yet. So great. Good. Can't wait for that. Wow. Well, that's weird. And also, I do that a lot. I kind of cherry pick what I like from movies and games a lot. I find myself doing that. I mean, I kind of made a story that I'm not even sure is there in Child of Light, so I understand.
Yeah,
I think it makes it more fun. It helps you like customize, like how people say art is what you make of it, basically. Like art isn't about the artist so much as it is about the viewer. So I guess that jives with
right.
that.
It's the author is dead from Bart, where it doesn't matter what they intended, it's just how you experience it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, or
Right.
like Banksy,
So
you know?
let's
Are you familiar with Banksy?
yeah the vandal, the
Yes.
sidewalk artist.
I have a fondness for him. He's like a street urchin, that is out there. And he's probably not a street urchin. He's probably like actually, but the idea is that he's a street urchin who's out there, sneaking around with paint cans, spray paint cans, but he makes cool like art, and that kind of makes a message. It's really cool. I like
Mhm.
that guy. But no one
Yeah.
knows what he means by his paintings because he's anonymous, So that's why I bring that up.
One cool thing though that the storyline does let you do is like alternate history, like because the idea is like the Templar have taken over the history books. History is written by the victors, as Napoleon says.
Hmm.
So that like you can be like, oh, okay, this is what the Templar want us to think happened, but you can go back and make different things happen because one of the things, when you're playing like a Star Wars game, like Edge of the Empire, like when you're playing Edge of the Empire, you're like, okay, do I want Vader to show up? Because if he dies, it's going to mess up the canon, right? You want to stick close to the canon, like the official history.
Right.
Now, the way they get around that here is you can mess up with the canon all you want because they're going to say, oh, that actually is what actually happened, but what the Templars say it did happen is different. So you can kind of do these alternate histories where, what if Adolf Hitler was a Templar, and what if this and this happened? What if the guy that killed what if the guy that crucified Jesus Christ was a Templar agent trying to get a hold of an artifact? And so you can kind of mess with history a little bit because it's so unreliable anyway. Like history is the most unreliable of the social sciences because we just had to do a lot of guesswork.
Yeah. Right.
And then they
Yeah.
also have this thing called quantum timelines where you can do these expansions, like basically the progenitors had or the precursors had this thing where they could see like different possible futures, and you could go and experience those in the expansion. So there's like an expansion where George Washington becomes a dictator and like takes over the United States as like this iron fisted dictator, and you have to go stop him. So like these different what if these counterfactuals like what if America had lost the revolution, or what if the Nazis had won World War II? You can explore these using that quantum timeline kind of plot device.
Weird. Yeah. That's cool though. I like it, and it's fun because whoever makes those games, they're really big into like history, like legit, right?
Yeah, they usually have historians on staff.
Yeah, yeah, which is cool. And like that was one of the big drawings of the first one to me, whereas they said, no, this is actually like I think it was Jerusalem, wasn't it? They said this is exactly as far as we know what it looked like. So
Right.
that was fun.
So let's talk about the Templars and the Assassins and their different philosophies because I think we can do a lot of psychology with that too.
Psychology. I'm a psychology guy.
Science.
Yes,
Yes, and I'm an assassin. What?
yes, yes. So yeah, what about them? We're talking about like I mean, you're talking about control. You're talking about like whether that's good or bad, or what do you mean?
Yeah, so just for people who haven't played the games, like the Templar are this organization based off the Knights Templar in history,
Hmm.
and the Assassins are based off of the Saracens, like the Arabic religious kind of sect that would just get high on hashish and then just go nuts.
Yeah.
The Hashashins, where the word like Hashashin, they'd smoke some hash and just go nuts and
Hmm.
kill people.
Which just seems
Um,
weird considering like people you normally smoke hash are just kind of chill.
yeah, I'm super chill, man. Also, I'm killing people. But I think it was like to take the edge off of the fear before a mission.
Yeah, that makes
But
sense.
in the game they both have like the same goal. Like they both want world peace and like a better world, but they have different ways of going about it. Like the assassins they value free will and like liberty and the ability to make your own choices above everything. And the Templar are more about control. They think humans are not able to be trusted with free will, and they kind of make some good points. Like one of them says, "We're cruel and desperate creatures set in our conquering ways. The Saxons and the Franks, the Ottomans and the Safavids. I could go on for hours. The whole of human history is but a series of conflicts and subjugation, desire for more and more and more." Which anyone that studied history, you go, well, maybe humans aren't really cut out for this free will thing.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of reminds me of Thomas Hobbes versus who's the other guy? Remember Thomas Hobbes, the Leviathan? He wrote the Leviathan,
Yeah,
and he talked about like I think
Locke.
it was him who talked. Was it Locke? It was the other political science or political philosopher, and they went back and forth. One said man is inherently evil and needs to be ruled. Another one said, if we can just get rid of government, men could rule themselves. Anyway,
Yeah. Um,
it kind of reminds me of that. What was it?
it's nice because it kind of paints like you always side with the assassins. You're playing an assassin, but they make it so that there's good people on both sides. Like you see some Templar who really just want to like just stop war, stop greed, control people to like kind of quell their violent tendencies.
Hmm.
And you're like, well, yeah,
I kind I kind of see it like this. I kind of see it like people could, if they understood enough of like how we act and what we do. It's hard to meet someone who studies psychology as much like a psychologist who is a bad person because we understand how
mhm.
people make mistakes, we understand what they do, and then we typically, help people with that, I think. So I think if we just understood more about people and didn't go upon these like stupid maxims of like pull yourself up by your bootstraps or just do the right thing, choose the right. Well, no shit, choose the right. Everyone knows that. It's just a matter of the fact of like can you and will you, you know. So I feel
Right.
like that's my
And
utopia.
the fun thing too about the way they do the storyline is they can pull in all these conspiracy theories thing and say that like the Templars or the assassins were pulling the strings behind it, right? Like the JFK assassination,
Hmm.
or like the Nikola Tesla and Edison feud was like Thomas Edison was a Templar and Tesla was like backed by the assassins. So if you're a history buff, just to see all these things kind of
Yeah, your mic's cutting out a little bit, but yeah, like the someone making coherent theory with all the facts. That's kind of bizarre, but fits the mold. I like that. It reminds me of urban fantasy settings, like that kind of thing, where someone makes like
yeah,
a what if story that fits all the facts perfectly. I love that. It always makes me go, oh, nice. So
yeah, yeah, especially because it's very conspiracy
theory-ish, yeah.
authors
Um,
because it's fun to.
your mic is going crazy right now. I can only hear like one word you say. But
God damn
uh,
it.
I know, right? It's this sound quality for the past 3 weeks has been just horrible. But that's okay because there's some cool things about psychology that I can go into here. Like first of all, I like the fact that there's a rivalry in these games. I like the fact that like you become this like assassin. I wish they like kind of highlighted the training a little bit more, maybe in the games, at least the ones I played, because like if you have a rivalry, then it makes you a lot better. You train harder and you end up performing better on tasks that you measure at. And it's funny because they did a study on it based on people who run 5Ks, runners in general, but most of them they just looked at 5Ks because that's the most. You've got a plethora of people that do that. That way you're not just kind of getting a selectivity bias. I mean, you are for runners in general who go to a race, but this minimizes it because people who run 5Ks are kind of all different sorts. Whereas people who run, like, let's say, ultra marathons, which are 100-mile runs, probably a different kind of person. So they looked at, like, they tried to look at people with 5Ks who ran those, and they try to determine, like if you had a rival, or when people who had rivals, what did it help you train better or not? So like how long did you train? Like how much increase did you have since your last 5K time? And they found that people who identified rivals at different runs were more likely to train harder and perform better, which is pretty cool. But also they found out the kind of people who select rivals. So what kind of things cause rivalries rather? One is similarity, which means like how close you are to the other person. You're not very likely to become or label a rival for like someone who is completely different part of life. You're like, oh, they're just a different person. Also, repeated competition with that person. Obviously, you can't have a rival if you don't run into him all the time. And then lastly, it was oh, what was it? Like closely decided contest. That's what it was. So like it can be something that's like uh that's like a landslide. You have to like it has to be something that is close each time. So like UFC fights are like this a lot. Like decisions are usually made between 2 to 3 points. So that's pretty interesting. Um, yeah, so they found that people are typically better. So that would make sense that these assassins are like highly trained and stuff. If they're out there training to fight against this oppressive kind of regime or even a different faction that's a rival, they're going to push themselves to great kind of physical ability, which is awesome. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it
So,
makes for a
are you
more
there?
interesting struggle.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, just checking on the mic, man. I know it's going crazy right now.
Oh my gosh, the internet in Arkansas, not great, not ideal.
I'm sorry, man. Yeah, this month has been bad for our listeners. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But um,
But
anyway,
yeah.
yeah.
So which which faction do you more identify with? Are you more about free will at all costs, or more about controlling people for the best, like in spite
Simpler.
of themselves?
Definitely Templar.
Templar?
Yeah.
Explain. They are the bad
May-
guys in the story.
Maybe I'm a bad person, but okay. So here's the thing: I see people all the time who walk into our clinic and they've made a fuck all with their life, right? And by the time they get to us, they're usually pretty bad. But like I look at a lot of people, even people like raising kids or doing whatever, and they're doing horrible things and they don't even know it. They're doing their best that they possibly can, but they're effing up. And I'm like, oh, don't
Yeah.
don't do that. That's gonna be bad for your kid. You don't want to do that. And like, but I can't correct everyone. So there's so many times where I just want to be like, you know what? Just no. This is what I do, and no, I'm not gonna explain it to you. You won't understand. Just no. Because like to get people to understand that, you have to make them understand things like first you have to sometimes convince people that people are swayed by little things. Sometimes that's an argument. You're like, well, actually, little small like things in our environment, like small stimuli, can switch us to one decision or another. Like for example, if there's a gun inside of a room just on a shelf somewhere along with a lot of other props, people are more likely to act aggressively on measures of, laboratory aggression. That's pretty weird. Most people wouldn't believe that or think that, but it's true. Like little things kind of set us up for priming, which makes sense through evolution because, like we should be able to pick up things and act on things that we don't necessarily consciously take in, or we don't, sorry, not consciously, I don't really like that term, but like laboriously ruminate over, right? Like think about for a while and go, oh, should I consider that? No, I mean, you just get a general sense of unease, right? And you say, why do you feel uneasy? I don't know, the hair's standing up on the back of my neck. Well, you saw some things and you felt some things or heard some things that you didn't really consciously process, but something's wrong. So
Right.
anyway, sometimes that's a fight and etc. So essentially, there's just tons of information people need to make good lives for themselves, or they could just let me do it for them. Like if I could just dictate, make a bunch of laws based on what would make people happy, I wish that I could do that because I don't have time to argue with it with
Right.
everyone. Just look at my Facebook page about that all the times I get in arguments with people trying to help them. I say something like, oh yeah, yeah, actually you don't want to do that. Like, oh, St. John's wort, for example. Someone's like, oh yeah, take St. John's wort. I'm like, yeah, don't do that. There's been some studies out that show that that interferes with and sometimes does completely inhibits actual medical life-saving medical things like antibiotics and other things like that. St. John's Wort's been kind of red listed. And they're like, no, it's benevolent. I'm like, okay. And they're like, show me the study. I'm like, okay, I'll go try to find it for you. Or you could fucking Google it yourself. Go to Google Scholar, type in St. John's Wort. But then I find it, and they go, I read the study, and it looks like I don't know. I mean, I'm curious about this, this, and this. I'm like, no, this isn't just one study. There's a lot, and it's known. It's already known that St. John's Wort isn't really a benevolent weed. We know that now. Don't do it, And then they're like, I don't believe you. And then I'm like, oh, fine. So like I go and find the study for them, and I show it to them, and I'm like, here's another one, and they're like, that's two. I mean, I've got these three studies from mommy's blogs. And you know how it is.
Those are-
This is how my Facebook
yeah,
feed
yeah,
looks like a
exactly.
lot, and I'm just trying to help. I'm like, listen, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you get the most out of your medicine that you're getting from the doctor. Just please,
Right, and that's
I'm
what
not a
makes
bad
Templars
guy.
such
Yeah.
that's what makes Templars such great villains is because they're not bad guys mostly. Like some of them get corrupt, but most of them just want to make the world a better place. Like that, those are the most interesting foils in a story or in a game. Are people who are trying to do the best they can. They just have a different philosophy, like a different way of going about it than your faction does.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like
Like
there's a
Ozymandias.
similar. It's got some parallel. Yeah,
Remember
right,
him?
exactly on
Yeah.
the Watchmen.
Yeah. You
Or
kind of at
my
the end, you're
campaign,
kind of
like I
like
tried to make the
yeah. At the end, you're kind of like you're right, and even Dr. Manhattan was like, yeah, good point. And you're like, what?
you just
What?
leave.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's parallels to Mormonism here too. The Mormon theology, they have like their idea for evil, like Satan. At the beginning, he was just like an angel, right? Like that's pretty common in most Christian theologies.
Yeah.
But the idea was God's like, okay, we're gonna create an earth, we're gonna put people on it, and then Jesus is like, cool, and then I'll die for them and whatever, I'll do the Jesus thing. And everyone's like, yeah, and they'll have free will, yay! And that was like the plan that God liked. And then Satan's like, wait, I have a plan. What if I go down there and I force everyone to be good, and then nobody goes to hell? Everyone goes back to heaven because nobody sins. And they're like, no, fuck you, Satan, free will. And so he gets cast out. But sometimes I find myself going, yeah, but Satan, we just have like 80 years of slavery, and then we get to be in heaven forever. Like that's a pretty good deal. I think I
Yeah.
might have voted for that.
Yeah. Blink of an eye and all that. That'd be like someone saying, will you
So
take a shot? Will you take a shot and then never get sick again or die? I'd be like, yes, I will take a shot and never get sick
right.
again or die because it's worth it. But yeah,
There's a
I just think that
fetishization of free will that we have as
yeah.
Americans, and maybe as Western culture. Like we
But and what is even free will? Come on, really? I don't know.
Might not even be a thing, but we just love the idea of it, and so that's kind of the free
Oh my.
will at whatever cost.
Yeah, yeah, and like yeah, this idea of free will is stupid anyway. Go listen to our player choice versus illusion of choice episode, and we talk about that. Free choice is just a matter of like, do I have something available, a choice available to me that I understand and recognize that is not being held from me, therefore I don't have freedom. But if you don't recognize the other options you have, if you're never presented with them, you don't know that you don't have free choice, but you don't. Like, yeah, the usually the thought experiment I say is, hey, do you want to go play Glishtenknut? And they go, what is that? And I go, oh, it's this game where you take a radiator and you bash it against your head, and then you swing it like a cricket bat and hit a soccer ball between field goals. And they're like, I've never heard of that. You're like, exactly. You didn't even know that was an option. You still considered yourself having free will today until you learned that this was an option you didn't have available because we don't have, that set up or whatever. But
Right.
it's an absurd notion. I think free will. What does it even mean? But whatever.
So,
Anyway. Yeah, so some of the things that I thought about when it came to freedom, right? America, right? People that have this idea of like
uh,
freedom and that kind of thing, is I thought about. Let me see. I think we have plenty of time. Is like behavioral flexibility, like cognitive flexibility. It's something we really highlight and we think is really important in the ACT paradigm. So like CBT, it's not so emphasized. Behavioral therapy, not so emphasized. But in ACT, it's really big. And it has to do with the fact of like people inhibit themselves all the time. Like, do you ever make stupid rules for yourself?
um, maybe I
Well,
don't know.
like okay, so video games, you have to complete them fully.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
Yeah. Where I'm like, oh, I gotta get all the stealth mode on the stealth game, and I can't let anyone see me, or I have to restart.
right, and so let's say you come across a game where you just know that's not even possible. What do?
I just don't worry about it anymore.
You just stop collecting everything. You just play the game.
Well, I'll either do that or I'll just stop playing the game entirely, depending on how much fun I'm having to begin with.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one would be the most what we call healthy, psychologically healthy, because you're allowing yourself. Okay. So the question oftentimes we do. Okay. So when we talk about behavioral and cognitive flexibility, we mean like what do your trajectories look like? Like let's say you get a full free day off. One trajectory might be, I'm gonna go like mow the lawn, get my car oil changed. I might do this and this and this, right? Another trajectory might be like, I'm just gonna sit in my boxers and watch like a Netflix series and just sow out all day, that kind of thing.
Yes, please. That
Yeah,
one.
exactly, yeah, and which is fine. Like that's perfectly fine, right? Unless it's the only thing you can do, like if you're depressed or something else, right? Then you have less
Mm.
flexibility as far as your trajectories go, your behavioral trajectories. So we try to emphasize that a healthy life. So what ACT says is you won't find an unhealthy person who has or yeah wait all unhealthy people have restricted behavioral trajectories, and all healthy people, psychologically healthy, have a large array of possible behavioral or and cognitive trajectories, right? So like
Hmm.
one, so I've talked about behavioral trajectories. That's like, what I could do in my day or what I'm going to do. Like some people get like restricted by panic attacks, for example. They say, I can't get in the car because I got a horrible accident. So now I can't get in the car because I'm afraid I'm gonna have a panic attack. So there you go, bam, that's one behavioral trajectory out of the way. Plus everything that involves a car, so knock all those out too. All right, so how about approaching cars? Yeah, knock all those out. What if my friend comes over the car? Yeah, knock out any trajectory that deals with that. So eventually you get this real tight trajectory of things you can do with every day, and then you start doing those, and there's no real flavor to your life, right? And people get pretty depressed with that, or anything, anxious sometimes too. It just depends. But cognitive flexibility has to do with like or freedom, cognitive freedom, I guess I should say, in light of the episode, has to do with like your. Okay, so let's say you are failing out of your semester in school, right? There's
Hmm.
different ways that you could think about that, or different thoughts you could have, different things your mind might do, right? Like one
Okay.
might be like, this semester is super hard, and I wasn't ready for it. Another one might be like, I'm a bad person and I suck. Another one might be like, this school sucks and it's stupid. Another one might be like, and you can have a lot of these different trajectories, fire off, sure. But what we're looking at in ACT therapy is uh, like how many of those are available? Because it's normal in life to experience, shitting on yourself, kind of, saying like, I suck, and I'm no good for this, blah blah blah. But you should also be having the thoughts of like, or like other times in your life, you should be able to be like, oh man, I'm awesome, I'm doing this well, and yay. Because having negative experiences is part of life. You're gonna have them, and it's good for you. It's healthy. You don't want to be doped up and stupid, but or naive, as some people say. But you also don't want to have a small number of positive experiences. So that has to do with cognitive flexibility and behavioral flexibility. So whenever we talk about freedom in this episode, it's actually like super important for the ACT paradigm, which means like we should have both behavioral freedom and also cognitive freedom to kind of like experience a wider range of things. And they say, ACT therapists and the researchers that developed it, they think that it's actually paramount for living a meaningful and happy life. So
That
I
sounds
don't
like assassin talk to me, Templar brother.
know. Yeah, I know. I know it's kind of ironic considering I just said that I want to control everyone if I had the choice between the two. But it's only because I want them to be like healthy, and the way I know how to do that is to make them do things that they don't understand yet. There's a reason why it takes a PhD to understand some of these things and how to get there. So,
Yeah, most
yeah.
people are too stupid to be trusted with their own freedom.
Is that their motto? I can get behind that.
Yeah, they should make that on their T-shirts. Templar, because you're too dumb.
A Templar, so you don't have to. That would be my. But no, I mean I think it's true. I mean a lot of people, they do their very best to be happy in life and fail miserably at it, right?
Right.
So you might as well let an expert handle it. I mean it sounds sick, but it's true. I'll handle your life for you. But
Don't you rest your pretty little head. We'll make the
I mean,
tough decisions.
isn't that what you do with kids though? I mean, like when you raise your kids, you're like, no, because I said so. Trust me, this is better for you, right? Sometimes when you know better, you just have to overrule the people. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a sicko, but if I'm a sicko, I'm a really benevolent sicko. Because
I just hope we don't get assassinated.
right, exactly. Well,
A powerful Templar agent has been detected in Oxford, Mississippi. Your mission is to take him out.
hey, bring it on, suckers.
Luckily, they only do these missions. Luckily, they only do those missions in scenic cities, so Mississippi should be safe.
I know there's nothing to climb here. There's just like bogs and like poor people.
There's
So
no parkour.
this place is horrible. I hate it. I went to Atlanta and it was a step up. Remember, we went to Arkansas and you and I are walking around and you're like, "This is miserable," and because you came from Colorado, and I was like, "What a paradise!"
It's true. It's true.
It's sad. When Arkansas is a step up, that's not a good sign. But
Yeah, that's what our state motto in Arkansas is. Thank God for Mississippi.
yeah, we'd be last if it weren't for them. But yeah. So no. So one of the things I was going to say about behavioral flexibility, cognitive flexibility, freedom, things like that, right? Is as much as I mock like freedom, America, it's actually super important for psychological health. And one of the things that restricts that is rule governed behavior. And what does that mean? Like, yeah, I think we've talked about this once.
Is that what you're saying about how we just make up rules for ourselves? Like, I have to get 100% completion on Zelda or I'm not going to finish it.
Yeah, yeah, like in real life too. Like, dessert is eaten after dinner. That makes sense.
Yeah, you have to
but it is a
finish,
rule.
you have to finish everything on your plate.
Yeah. Or here's one. Okay, so my job this year is a pack manager. Pack manager means psychological assessment clinic, and I'm the manager of it. I
Yeah.
bring in all the people and I advertise, and then when people call, I set up these.
Kind of like a pimp, right? Like you're bringing the Johns in and hooking
Right.
them up.
Oh, I've got just the assessor for you. Follow me. Ain't she beautiful? Yeah, she'll get your IQ all the way assessed. It's great.
To get your cognitive processes all straightened out.
Yeah, yeah. You think you got mental retardation? Yeah, I know just the one for you. Like, that's the thing. No, a lot of it's ADHD testing and that kind of thing, but or learning disorders or whatever. Or some people, like this one guy called and he was just like, well, I guess no, I'm not gonna say that. Why would I say that? That's confidentiality. But actually, it's anonymous.
This one
So.
guy called. His name was James Smith, and this
Yeah,
guy
yeah. Actually, yeah,
the squirrels.
it's anonymous and there's no way to detect him. But he was just like, I don't know what's wrong with me, man. He like went through this big old thing, and I was like, that's more of a. There's two parts of our clinic. There's the services where we do therapy, and then there's the assessment where we do like assessment. We figure out what's wrong with people, like fit for duty, for cops, or like fit to stand trial for people who are being prosecuted, things like that.
Right.
But just any kind of psychological testing. But mine is the assessment clinic, so I'm not really equipped to like do therapy with them as the manager there. I work on both sides, but I'm the manager of the assessment one. So anyway, I was like, yeah, you may want to call the services center because you guys It sounds like you're on the edge of losing it. But
Mm.
yeah. So one of the things assessment. How do I get that? Oh yeah, rule governed behavior. Yeah. So what happened was the old manager who was kind of we were doing like a relay thing. She's handing it off, and I'm picking up the torch to be the manager this year. And
Hmm.
she was like, okay, so here's the rule. When you do an assessment, 1 month later, the report needs to be in their hands. And I was like, got it. Sure. Seems obvious. Got it. She's like, okay, so what does that mean? That means that by 2 weeks, you have to have the diagnosis. By 3 weeks, you have to have the tech protocol, which is all the printouts, and have and understand what it is, and have it ready for them for feedback. And by the fourth week, you can have it in their hands. And I was like, great, cool. And she started getting super upset because we took this huge vacation, and that I did. But I had already called the clients, and I was like, hey, anyone who has open files with the psychological assessment clinic, this is Jeremiah, and I'm just letting you guys know the PAC's going to be closed for 2 weeks for the summer. This is pretty standard. This happens a lot, and just let you guys know. Plus, I let them know on their first hand when they were signing their paperwork and paying for the assessment. I told them, hey, we're going to be closed for 2 weeks, so take that into account whenever I say I'm going to have a report to you in 1 month. They say, okay. So, and then when we got done, when I did the feedback, they were super happy. So she was still upset, even though she knew that the clients were happy, and they literally said this at feedback: that was the greatest $800 I've ever spent, quote unquote, right? Which is a lot of money, but
Mm.
they're rich. And I was like, wow, that's really thank you, for saying that. That's huge, and we make money by word of mouth, so let other people know. Even though she knew that those clients said that, she still was mad. She's like, I still can't believe you didn't have it to him in a month. And I was like, well, remember the 2 weeks I was off? I actually got it to him a week early because I did 4 weeks in 1 month, or 1 month in 1 week. So she was mad because of the rule, right? But the rule
Right.
was made so that clients don't look bad on the clinic. You see? Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, like when you're forgetting why the rule exists and you just fetishize the rule, then it becomes
Exactly.
counterproductive.
That's rule governed behavior, and that happens all the time. And ACT is like revolves around that a lot because people make themselves miserable by making the rules for themselves and then follow them blindly, even though it's leading them to So the question we ask is, we do functional analyses. We say, like, what are you doing that for? And they say, well, like, gosh, I tried to leave early today and I didn't make it to work early, so I'm failing. And I say, what is that in service of? Why are you there early every day? Well, it's in service of me being a good employee. Okay, so you want to be a good employee. Yeah, what does that mean? I want other people to see me as a good employee. Great, great. So you got this rule to do that. It's like, yeah, so this rule has served you well so far. It's like, yeah, and I'm like, but now it doesn't because you've got kids. You need to bring them to the babysitter. Like, yeah, and I'm like, so you think you're failing because of that? They're like, yeah, and I'm like, is that true though? Maybe go talk to your boss. And they talk to the boss and like, oh, he thought I was actually a really good employee, and just because I'm not early, that's no big deal. No one else is either. And I'm like, see, you got that rule, and you're following it blindly because it served you kind of well in the past, but you're forgetting why you're doing it. So anyway, rule governed behavior, all I'm saying is that restricts your freedom, your flexibility, both cognitive and behavioral, and it makes you kind of sad
Mhm.
sometimes. So I typically highlight that, and you'll probably see that as like a theme in the podcast, but for our listeners. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's my big
it's the
old
same
spiel on
reason.
freedom.
Yeah, and I think there might be something to that because you said you were more into being a Templar. Like
Hey,
the Templar, strangely enough, were against slavery.
right.
And you're like, wait, why would they be against slavery? They're all about control. But when they talk about it, they're like, okay, so if you control someone's body, their mind will rebel. But if you can control their mind, they'll be slaves and they won't even know it. So the idea of like you can give them like this kind of framework of control without them being aware of the limitations, and they'll still feel like they have flexibility and freedom, and they don't like. It's a lot more effective than just being like, all right, here's all these rules for no reason.
Yes. I do that all the time. We talked about that on the episode where I said the most effective parenting is giving illusion of choice. Because then
Right.
what happens whenever someone selects a route for themselves, they tend to uh, like it more. They prescribe it. They're more likely to be happy after having done that, right? It's a stupid
Right.
trick, but that's just how we act as humans, right? Confirmation
Hmm.
bias. And the fact that like we come up with reasons why we do things after we already decide to do them, it's another like
Right.
strange counterintuitive psychological thing. So I operate on those two facts by letting people think they have a choice when they don't. But
Right. It's like I'm not a slave. I can do whatever I want, but really you're a wage slave. You've got all these bills to pay. You've got student loans to pay off. You don't have a lot of real choices, but you made those choices to get in that position, so you feel like you have freedom.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas if I just walked in and put like a manacle and like a collar, like an iron collar on your neck and manacles on your legs, you'd be looking for a chance to escape at every turn.
Yeah,
But
even
when
if
you
you had the
forge your
same
own
amount of
madness,
freedoms.
we just love it.
Well, that's
Right.
the thing, yeah. Like if people think they're being restricted in any way, they tend to rebel against it. It's called reactance, right?
Yeah.
That's what the social
You gotta
psychologists call
hide
it.
the madness.
Yeah. So what you do is, yeah, exactly. You let people think they're free while locking them down. On the other hand, and it sounds
Right.
bad, but if it's for the and it can be, you can use this for evil easily. But
Right.
like
A
you
lot
can
of
also use it
Templars
for
are
good,
corrupt. Yeah.
right? Like
I mean,
oh,
for
you've heard
example.
of Viktor Frankl, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Viktor Frankl, he had no freedom. He was he's a Jew, and during the time of the internment camps in World War II, and he was enslaved. So he's in
Hmm.
there, and he's got like no choice. They tell you when to wake up, they tell you what to eat, which is almost nothing. They tell you where to go, when to do it, and they're hitting you with rifle butts, and it's cold and miserable, right? You've got no freedom, or so you think. But finally, he realized this, and this was super helpful for him, is he said one day he woke up and he's like, wait a minute, they control every part of my life, but they can't control my happiness or like how I view it, where I put my meaning, right? So like
Hmm.
he said, like I can close my eyes and imagine my wife's face, or I can close my eyes and imagine the sunset, or something like that. They can't control that. And that small amount of freedom made him feel like a rebel. And he was like, yeah,
Yeah.
F you guys. Like F you. You can't take that from me. You can't take my happiness. I can choose to be happy despite the fact that you're trying to make me miserable. So he started
Hmm.
smiling more. Smiling has a biofeedback loop, so he started feeling happier. And bam, like not saying that you should be happy in an internment camp. But all I'm saying is that you have that choice, and by having that choice, suddenly you feel some freedom, and that freedom gives you flexibility. So yeah,
Right, and also
totally.
made him more rebellious. So it's the same thing we were talking about with our illusion of player choice thing. Like if you tell the PCs, like the player characters in your game, like you're DMing a game, and you say, "Okay, you guys have to fight the dragon." They're gonna do everything they have to do to like not fight the dragon,
Yeah,
or this guy's got to escape alive. Like if you have an important character that's gonna escape alive, they'll do whatever it takes to make sure he doesn't escape alive. Like that bad guy's gonna die that day. And
yeah,
so putting limitations on people makes them want to break out of it. But if you just let them think they're in charge and you're just behind the scenes kind of controlling things, like they will happily give you their own chains
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so true.
for their own good.
Well, I mean, yeah, it could be used for evil, obviously, but I help people every day with this stuff, like helping people feel like they're, you know, I don't know, I won't get into it.
Yeah. It's just like when
But
you're giving your kids choices and one of the choices is not a choice at all. Just having the choice makes them feel more compliant.
yeah, yeah. I mean, in all situations, in my experience and from what research shows, people work better with cans rather than can'ts, right? Like
Hmm.
I always teach my kids this. When my kid walks up to me with a problem, you've heard of problem solution, right? Like you say, all
Hmm.
right, so like, oh, like this spilled on me. That's just a complaint. By complaining and then expecting someone to fix it, if I do fix it, I'm reinforcing that complaining behavior, right? They think that they can
Hmm.
just complain and then have everything fixed for them. Instead, what I do is I say, so. And they're like, well, it fit on me. It's on my shirt. It is. Ugh, that's horrible. And I empathize with them. I'm like, that's sticky, gross. Huh. And then they're like, will you clean it? Oh, yes, I will. What do you say? Please. Okay. Then I clean it. Like the
Hmm.
whole thing of like, if I reinforce him complaining and then feeling helpless and then me fixing his problem, that's going to be more likely, by definition, that's going to happen in the future. Instead, if I teach him to seek out a solution, he'll often find that he can solve the problem himself. So
Right.
the important thing is to teach him to say cans rather than can't. Like, oh, I can't reach this. What can you do? Well, I can get the chair, but it's too far away. Ah, okay. Well, let me just pick you up instead. Like, in other words, you're training problem solving rather than problem identification. So I don't
Right.
know. I feel like this is a huge part of raising yourself as a human and also raising kids. Like just being a good or healthy person. So
Right.
that's pretty much the end of my spiel. But I that's the first thing I thought of when I thought of freedom in this podcast and the fact that like fighting for freedom, what would be worth fighting for? Well, it'd be these things.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just more interested from a storytelling aspect.
God damn it, your mic cut out again. You're interested from a storytelling perspective. What?
Right. What makes good villains? And
Yeah.
instead of just like cookie cutter, I want to take over the world Disney villains, like something you can relate to, something you're like, oh, I can see why that would be something that I can see. People don't just wake up one day and want to punch a puppy in the face. Like usually they just have a different view than you do. Like it's about different philosophies more than good and evil.
Definitely. Except that's a sophisticated way of thinking. I know that there's a pastor I was talking to, who said that that's not how evil operates. Evil operates in a way that it's, but it's malignant and it doesn't like on purpose. So they kind of demonize literally, evil in that way, or bad decisions in a way that like makes it like it's on purpose and like they're like the mustache twirling bad guy. That's the paradigm he was going with. So it's weird for me.
Right. And there's I forget, there's a book on child development. I forget the name of it now, but it goes through like the different stages of kind of development that humans go through. And
Oh
there's
yeah,
a
cool.
level where you see everything
Kohlberg's.
in that way. Yeah, yeah. There's a level where you see everything as like those guys are evil, we're good. And then
Mm.
as you mature, you start to see like, oh wait, it's like George R. R. Martin villains. Like when you read their chapters, you're like, oh man, I can see why Cersei acts that way. Like she's not just trying to be evil. She's got, she has her own ideals that she's trying to follow.
Right, yeah. It's yeah, that's called Kohlberg's, moral development or
It's,
something like that theory.
yeah,
Whatever. If it is Kohlberg, he's one of the few theorists, or a few of the theorists that did moral development in humans. But yeah, I
right.
mean the whole idea of like seeing other people as humans and understand, like, here's the big difference. And I teach this in marital therapy all the fucking time, and it takes a lot of practice to get this. But there's a difference between saying I understand that person's behavior and I agree with it, or that it's okay, right? No, not that it's okay.
Mhm.
That I like that and I want them to do it again. Saying it's okay and I like it and I want you to do it again are two different things, right? Like for example, let's use the bachelor party, like or the not bachelor party, the party after the wedding. My wife comes down and I said, yeah, we're just having a small party with just the dudes, And then she comes
Mhm.
down and there's a
True.
ton of people there, including girls and bridesmaids. Like she has every right to be mad. She was like, what the heck, dude? You told me no one's gonna be here and I'm sitting in the room all by myself and this sucks. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's horrible. And then she kind of went on and said how much it sucked. And I was like, you're right. Yeah, that's awful. Um, yeah, that's a horrible thing. And then I was like, do you want to know why it happened? She's like, oh yeah. And then as it turns out, we got kind of shit on by the wedding folks. The bride and the groom, I guess, invited a bunch of people over and didn't tell us, and they rented our cabin, so we can't say no. And then then it's just a
Right.
matter of like just time before Amy shows up. So it was just one of those bad situations. But her me saying it's okay that you're mad doesn't mean that it's like I agree with it or that I like it, because I don't like her being mad, and it sucks that she's saying horrible things about it. She's like, you did this on purpose and you try to hide this from me. Yeah, rightfully so, because that's what it freaking looks like. But
Right.
so me saying like, hey, that's okay, and you're right to be mad. Like that doesn't mean that I agree with it or that I want her to be mad or that she should be mad in the future. It just means that like
Mhm.
that's totally
It just
understanding
means, yeah. Right,
where you're
you're
at.
not painting her as like a horrible person. You're like, oh, what a bitch, she's mad for no reason, which is like the impulse to when
Of
there's a
course.
nemesis, you're like, oh, they're evil and I'm good,
Well,
obviously.
because I
But
know the reason, you know the reason, everybody that's there knows the reason, but she doesn't. And so for me, it's offensive that she assumes I'm a bad person. But then when I really think about it, I'm like, well, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you show up, what else are you gonna suspect? Like
right.
what other conclusions might you draw, especially in the moment when you're upset? Like that's totally fine. And
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 for
that's
people DMing or GMing out there, this is a great thing to take away when you're writing your campaigns. Don't make the villain just like I'm evil because I'm a necromancer. Like in one of my campaigns, I had these high elves who were going to wipe out like an entire city to stop an infestation, and that's like an evil thing from the hero's point of view. But from their point of view, they're looking at like a greater good kind of thing. They're trying to stop this thing from spreading, and so like yeah, we'll kill 10,000 to save a million. That's how we view life. And so they made really good antagonists because they thought they were right and they had their own like they were right within their own paradigm. They weren't
yeah,
just
like
evil like killing for the sake of killing.
the Fae in general were like that. That's been a recurring theme.
Yeah.
They're interesting that way because you find yourself on
Hmm.
opposite ends, but you respect each other, and you're like, well, I can't let you do this, and they're like, I can't let you not, or I can't let you stop me, and you're like, well, sure enough, that's true. Here we go. You
Right.
fight. So it's fun.
So it makes more interesting villains and more interesting NPCs when you actually flesh them out and say why would they be this way? Is it because they want to be evil? Because evil is evil. Evil is a cancer and they can't help themselves, or
Yeah.
are they just doing what they do they have a different view of like what like we always talk about what do you value? Like what are your values? Like they just have different values than what you have.
Right. Exactly. Which it's okay. Like then you determine like why do they have those. A lot of times it makes sense, but or you could just say they're
Mhm.
evil people, whatever.
Right. And we see a lot of that in war too, right? Like we demonize the Japs, they're just killing themselves, kamikaze crazies. But then you look at them like, why are they doing that? You're like, oh, okay, they're doing the most honorable thing given their paradigm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. But I think we just solved the world's problems, if we want to, might be done.
All in a day's work. Not bad for
Yeah.
bad internet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry to the listeners for the crappy quality the last 3 weeks. I know it's been bad, but there's not much we can do. It just comes with traveling and pursuing our fun and happiness over the summer. So I hope you guys can bear with us while we try to make
Yeah.
ourselves happier people.
It was that or go 2 months without updating the show. So we thought you'd rather have a bad show than no show at all.
Yeah. Yeah. But
So,
anyway.
yeah, but that's all I really want to talk about for Assassin's Creed. I think it's a complex game. I think it's really fun for history buffs, and I think if you don't like the weird alien stuff, you can just ignore it for the most part. So it's got something for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I intend to finish up Black Flag as soon as I can. But anyway, well, all right. I guess we can move on to the feedback section then.
All right.
Feedback section. All right, this is the part where we talk about the interactions we've had with the community. So, welcome, community. Thanks for interacting. It's been lovely.
And that's the feedback section.
Yeah. We haven't had a lot of interaction. We did have Jake, and he's a pretty common poster in our Facebook page. He posted that BioShock Infinite thing as well. It's kind of been all over the news, but he threw it up on the Game Theory podcast site to talk about. So that was pretty cool. Also, the Electric Thought one, he put that up too. The Electric Thoughts, wow. Electric shocks and being alone with your thoughts kind of experiment. It's been kind of all over the place, and yeah.
Yeah, he's been our news correspondent this week.
Yeah, I guess he has. Yeah. Essentially, that's it. I think Dalton, another guy, he asked about animes to watch, and obviously Attack on Titan is #1 there.
Yeah.
Also, what was another one? Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
Nope, might cut out. Full Metal Alchemist is awesome. It's Brotherhood, I think, is the one that's the best one, and that's the one where it doesn't start with them being tiny kids, and it's really good. Very popular, and surprisingly, like it starts off very like childish, but surprisingly dark and gets crazy quick.
Yeah. 3
That was a
episodes in.
recommendation of yours that I actually took, and I did not regret it.
We had Johannes Rasch, I think. I don't know, I might have butchered that name, but he brought up something about the Dota 2 International 4 Championship because they breached $10 million
Yeah.
on their prize pool.
Yeah, that is insane. Because that was like not listener, fan like funded, basically crowdfunded.
Right.
They're the ones who put their own money for it.
And we've had a lot of listeners just going nuts with the Steam sales this past couple weeks, looking for games like Child of Light.
That's a great game. If you haven't played Child of
But
Light, oh my goodness, get it.
Oh, so fun. We haven't had any new emails this week. If you want to email us with any questions or comments, just send an email to thegametheorypodcast@gmail.com.
Yes. Also, you can check out our Twitter page. I've been pretty active on it, and it's twitter.com/gametheorypod. All one word. Come check it out. I put up a lot of cool stuff. Some are studies. Some are like actually, I think most are studies. Other times I just put up like funny little stuff that I find, but mostly it's like some pretty cool stuff. Some of the stuff we talk about in this podcast, actually, I'll post there first. So yeah, go check us out. Follow us on Twitter. It's good times. Additionally, there's a Facebook page, right?
Yep. Join us on Facebook.
Yes. We have a Facebook page. It's pretty active. People talk quite a bit, and sometimes there's bursts of activity. Sometimes it's kind of quiet, but for the most part, there's a steady stream of conversation. It's good.
Indeed. So for our question of the week, I'm going to ask our listeners, which faction would you side with ideologically? The Assassins, who are about freedom and free will above all, or the Templar, who believe that mankind needs to be controlled to create world peace?
Yeah, that'd be a great question. I'd be very very curious.
I have a feeling we'll be in the minority as Templar supporters here.
Yeah, hopefully, unless there's a bunch of us, then that would scare me. Yeah, but good. Check us out, and and I guess finally you can leave us a review on the iTunes store. We always love those. 5 stars are awesome. 1 stars are fine, but whatever your honest opinion is. But we'd appreciate that too. We love the feedback.
right? On iTunes or Stitcher. And yeah, we always appreciate those. So, next episode.
Next episode, man. What are we doing?
I'm still trying to set up the cosplay thing. Now, I don't want to do it while everything sucks on our end because I want our interviews to actually be professional, so people want to keep going back. So I do have a couple cosplayers lined up. I'm getting a few more, but I'm going to wait until we're more settled so we can actually do the interview. It's going to be hard enough to balance because we have people in Australia and Europe and everywhere. So just time zones wise, it'll just be better to wait on that one.
Okay.
So next week, I'm thinking either like co-op couch games or maybe we'll do like an entire Edge of the Empire like episode just because that's what we're playing a lot next week.
Yes. Yes. That would be great. Hopefully to get to play a lot of that, and if not, yeah, hopefully we'll have something to talk about. We'll have been hanging out with each other for another full week, so should be good.
Right. And we'll be in the same room, so internet will be better.
Yes, I know, right? Yeah, and I think I've got. Okay, yeah, I know what I'm gonna do. Anyway, yeah, so it'll be good. Can't wait to have you guys for another week, and thanks for tuning in for this week. And until then, I guess we can sign off.
All right. So until then, I'm David.
And until then, maybe a little later, I'm Jeremiah. And this has been the Game
We
Theory Podcast.